Good holy and good day, everyone, especially to our teacher, Ma'am Imelda Giralao. I am Alber Kristelle Nalugon from BSED Science 4. And my topic to discuss today is about the information processing theory, or what we also call as the IPT. But before we will proceed, let's have first our objectives. So at the end of the discussion, you will be able to explain the nature of information processing theory, and you have also to determine the basic components of information processing model. So now, let us begin. So I have a question. Have you ever wondered how you get information and get it processed by your brain? Or have you stored information based on what you see, what you hear, what you touch, or using of your senses? So that questions will be answered later as we go on to our discussion. But for now, let us first define what is information processing theory. So it is a cognitive framework developed by American psychologists George A. Miller and Richard Shifrin in the 1960s. So they explain how the human mind processes, stores, and retrieves information. They say that our brain analyzes many pieces of information at the same time, and this IPT is a cognitive psychology theory that investigates the mental processes involved in acquiring of knowledge, storing of information, and also application or using of knowledge. So it focuses on the flow of information within a person's mind as it moves from one stage to the next. So now, here's the nature of IPT. So according to this information processing theory, the human mind is viewed as a computer-like information processor. According to this model, events are made up of separate bits of information that are processed in stages such as encoding, storage, and retrieval. So I know that we are all familiar about how computer works, right? So this IPT uses a computer model to describe human learning. So how the human learns was compared to a computer. So just like the computer, information comes in, it gets processed, and then it gets stored and retrieved. So it's also like our human mind. That's how it works also. It's just that the computer model provides us a decent summary in comparison for us to easily understand. So here are the components of information processing model. So according to the cognitive psychologists, they identify three primary components of information processing, and each plays a crucial role in the overall cognitive process. First component is the sensory memory. So this initial stage briefly holds and filters external stimuli with a limited capacity and short duration. So sensory memory is responsible for selective processing, allowing us to focus on relevant information and disregard unimportant information. So sensory memory stores information that our minds receive through many senses, such as visual, smell, touch, and auditory information. So it is extremely short, lasting barely half of a second. We all know that our sensory organs are constantly flooded with information, and the mind ignores or forgets most of this to save us from being overloaded. So after all, we can pay attention to everything in the surroundings. So what is unimportant to our sensory memory is filtered away. So when sensory information engages and captures the mind's attention, it is transmitted to our short-term memory. So basically, it only sends what seems important to the next stage. So as a result, the information that most likely to reach our short-term memory is often either interesting or familiar to us on a personal level. For example, the smell of a baking bread, the smell of the chemicals, the smell of a sweater, the taste of an apple, if you are hearing a song. So that's some of the example of sensory memory. The second component is the short-term memory, or what we call the STM. So information from the sensory memory could be transferred to STM, so where it is temporarily stored. So it's only temporary and has a limited capacity as suggested by George Miller. So our short-term memory, also known as working memory, stores information that only lasts up to 30 seconds. So this means it has a limited capacity only. So as a result, it can only process a certain number of pieces of information at a time. But of course, it varies from person to person. For instance, information that is already familiar to us typically requires less cognitive capacity, and is therefore it's easier to process. So we also pay more attention to information we believe it's important. So this is our brain's way of ensuring this information gets processed like it should. Some examples of this STM or short-term memory is remembering a phone number. Of course, if someone tells you a phone number, you use your short-term memory to recall it. So it's a perfect demonstration of short-term memory because if you don't dialing that number, then it fades away from your memory shortly. Second example is following directions. So when you read or hear instructions and then follow them, you are utilizing your short-term memory. So you keep those details in your mind just long enough to complete the task. But when the task is completed, the directions that you've listened to will be also placed in your mind. Next is the long-term memory or LTM. So the STM encodes and transfers important information to LTM where it can be kept permanently. So the LTM with its unlimited capacity serves as a long-term data storage throughout our lives. So our long-term memory retains information and it possesses a much greater capacity unlike the short-term memory which only has limited capacity. So in our long-term memory, we encode and organize several sorts of information, most notably facts, principles, idea, or personal experiences. So some examples of LTM are recognizing symbols. I know that if we are having our long drives or travels, we can identify the signage that can be found on the road, right? So it's an example of LTM. Next is in chats with a partner. So vividly recalling previous conversations and agreements, most especially if that memory is about anniversaries, birthdays, or a message arguing with your boyfriend or girlfriend, right? So you can really forget the one. It's an LTM. Next is birthday. Of course, recalling the date and significance of a loved one's birthday. Next is childhood memories. Of course, after many years have passed, you can still remember the face of your childhood buddy, your happy memories together, the time that you play with your with the others, and lastly, high school memories. Those are very unforgettable. So that's the three basic components of information processing model. So now, did it all answer the questions I asked earlier? And yes, that's how our brain works. So these three components are separate and sequential. Each stage has different function in the effective processing of information. As we progress from sensory memory to STM and then to LTM, our cognitive system filters, organizes, and stores information, allowing us to efficiently learn, recall, and retrieve knowledge. So understanding these memory phases can have their purpose and help us teachers or future teachers to make educational strategies that caters the cognitive processes involved in learning. Therefore, it can help to enhance the performance of the students. So that's all for information processing theory, and hope you learned something new today. Thank you and good holiday.